Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So sorry.
Good morning, Senate Agriculture. It is Tuesday, January 14th. We are the Senate Agricultural Committee, and as I do at the start of each week, I just like to go around the table and introduce the senators and the committee assistant, and we'll just start on this side.
Yep, Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District. And Robert Plunkett representing the Bennington District. Steve Heffernan representing Addison County.
Joe Major representing Windsor.
Linda Lehman, committee assistant.
Russ Ingalls, Essex Orleans, and welcome today.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you. Who do we have today?
We are representing NOFA, which is the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, and we have some slides to share with you, if that's okay. If I can find them again. Let's see. Okay.
Just introduce both yourselves.
Absolutely. For the record, of course.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm Maddie Kempner, and I'm the Policy and Organizing Director at NOFA.
I'm Joanna Doran. I'm the local food access director at NOFA.
And our names and titles are through on the slide. Thank you so much for having us today. We are really looking forward to getting to know and work with this committee. And nice to see you again, Senator Collmore.
Yep.
We wanted to share a little bit about our work as an organization with you today, in addition to our policy priorities for this year. Our organization might be new to some members of the committee, and even for those who have heard of NOFA, our work takes a lot of different forms in the food and farming system, and some of you may have intersected with our work in different ways, and there might be parts that you're less familiar with. So we're going to give you a pretty broad overview to start here before we get into our policy work. In the folders in front of you, you have a few things. You have business cards for myself and Joanna, as well as Jess Hayes Lucas, who's a grassroots policy organizer with NOFA, who you'll also be seeing in the building this year. And you also have our annual report, which gives you a little bit more background if you want to take a peek at that at your leisure, gives you an insight into our work. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you have a handout about our local food security programs and our budget request for those this year. NOFA is a statewide member-driven organization. We were founded in Putney, Vermont in 1971, which makes us one of the oldest organic farming organizations in the United States. We have a majority farmer board, and we have a membership of about 1,300 around the state, and our membership is growing. We have increased our membership by about 11% since the end of 2023, when we had about 1,160 members. We also have a reach of about 12,000 people around the state and the region through our newsletters and our communications. Our mission is up on the screen here, but what it comes down to is really understanding that when we get food and farming right, we get a lot of other things right. And we create an environment where people and the planet can be healthy and thrive. That's what we are about. Farmers produce the food that feeds us all, and we know that thriving farms can benefit our state and each of our communities in so many other ways as well. Some of those benefits are named on the screen here, and we could probably all add to this list. You'll see here, farms create strong local economies, shorter supply chains, thriving rural communities, active working lands, they support natural resources and biodiversity, and the list goes on. And similarly, our work to support farmers in the food system takes a lot of different forms as well. We work really hard to support farmers' ability to be viable as businesses and contribute all the benefits to our communities. And we also work really hard to make sure that all Vermonters have access to the food that farmers are growing and producing on their farms. So I'm going to share a little bit with you, Joanna and I, about the rest of our programs at NOFA so that you have the full picture. First, our farmer services team provides direct support to farmers in the form of one-on-one business planning and technical assistance, mentorship and cohort programs for farmers to learn with and from each other, which we know is one of the best ways for farmers to learn, funding opportunities directly to farmers like our resilience grants program, climate resilience planning, and organic transition support for farmers looking to get certified organic. Those last two are relatively new offerings that NOFA is focusing on more recently through new federal programs that we've been able to get support from. Our policy and organizing team, which I lead, includes our member-led policy steering committee, which is made up entirely of farmers. Our team really works hard to listen to and bring the voices of our members and our farmers to you all, and also to our federal policymakers. And Joanna can share a little bit more about our food access work and our educational programming.
So we have a food access team, which works with both direct market channels like farm stands, CSAs, or community supported agriculture shares, and farmers markets, and a wholesale side of things, which includes our farm to school work and farm to institution work. And all of those programs are intended to make sure that food grown by our Vermont farmers are accessible to Vermonters, and making sure that those farmers are receiving appropriate pay for the food that they're growing. So we work on both food security and farm viability for those. We also at NOFA do education and community building through on-farm events throughout the summer, farmer to farmer workshops to share knowledge, and our annual winter conference in February, where a lot of information is shared and folks can meet each other with shared values and can exchange information.
Thanks, Joanna. And a little bit more information about our conference, which you are all very much cordially invited to attend, is coming up on February 16th and 17th at UVM. It's at the Davis Center and some surrounding classrooms at UVM. We have over 40 workshops, and we have a day of intensive workshops on Sunday for people that want to take deeper dives into some of the topics at the conference. And there's really good snacks. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the snacks. And then finally, another huge part of NOFA's work is our certification program, which is called Vermont Organic Farmers. You may have seen this label around, hopefully, when you're shopping for food. VOF is an LLC that is accredited by the USDA to provide organic certification services. And it was formed in 1985 by farmers, actually before there was even a federal national organic program. So we've been doing this a long time, and we currently certify 725 farms and processors around the state to the national organic program standards. And I thought I would share a few stats with you around our certification program here in the state. We, as at the end of 2024, we certify 161,907 acres as organic in the state. And the gross sales of our farmers and our processors totaled over 375 million last year. I also always think it's interesting to share the breakdown of the types of farms that we have that are certified organic in the state. So you'll see here we have 117 dairy farms that are certified organic, which is about a quarter of the state's dairy farms currently. We have 168 vegetable and fruit producers that are certified organic, and 250 maple producers that are certified organic. So that's grown in the last few years to become our largest certified organic scope, which is what we call them. It's important beyond these. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So what's the process to get certified organic?
Yeah, great question. So there is.
Thank you.
The first, and we can have our certification staff come in and provide way more information than you ever wanted to know. But at a high level, there is a transition period. So if a farmer has some land that has not been under certified organic or under organic practices, there's a transition period for that land. Usually it's 3 years for folks to start that certification process. Or there's a transition period similarly for animals who have not been raised organically. For dairy animals, for example, they're supposed to be fed organic feed from the last third of their gestation before they can come onto a certified organic operation. And then there is an annual inspection. So each farm is inspected annually and has to fill out an application, really detailing how they're going to meet the requirements of the organic standard. And then our certification staff reviews that and approves the application if it's complete and in good standing. And then throughout the year, at some point, they'll have an inspection to confirm that they're meeting the requirements. And we also have to do spot checks and periodic kind of unannounced inspections.
Why are most people that are choosing organic, why are they doing that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons, and it changes over the years. You know, back in, I would say, the early 2000s, we started to really see a huge rise in certified organic dairy production, for example. And at that time, the market was really booming for organic dairy. And so the demand was just far outpacing the supply at that point. And then over the years, it's kind of shifted. So a lot of folks, I think, got into certified organic dairy in particular, or get into certified organic production, sometimes for the economic benefit and the market benefit of that certification. Oftentimes, a lot of other folks get into it because they just believe in this way of farming, and they feel like it's healthier for the land or for their animals or for themselves and their workers. So there's a lot of different reasons that folks get certified. There is an exemption for really small producers. If you're making less than $5,000 a year, you can use the word organic without necessarily being certified. But most of our producers have some, market, some consumer facing way that they're using the label. So that's a huge benefit to folks as well.
It's come a long ways. I was just doing the math in my head. In 1986, I started in Brandon, Vermont, working for a farm, agricultural farm, spraying fertilizer and all. And we used to joke then that the difference between organic and regular farmers were that we sprayed the organic ones at night. But that just isn't the way that it is anymore. This is just a lot of people wishing to, for whatever reason, to be organic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to see.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there an expense between organic and non-organic farmers?
Do you mean for the farmers themselves or to the consumer? For the farmers, there is a cost to get certified. And there is also a federal program that reimburses farmers for a significant portion of that cost. So when a farmer gets certified, sometimes we have producers. So on this list, for example, you might have someone who's certified for dairy and maple and field crops, for example. They can get reimbursed for up to 75% of their certification fee through this federal program for each one of those scopes. So they can get up to $750 or 75% of their fee back. And that's actually a misconception. A lot of folks feel like before they look deeply into it, they feel like there's a cost barrier or prohibitiveness to organic certification. And that cost share program has been really key in helping, especially our smaller producers, get certified and stay certified.
There must be a good network around as far as to help people organic get rid of their product.
Definitely. And I mean, honestly, it's a lot of the work that we do is help make connections with folks either through direct markets like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, or through wholesale markets. And institutional purchasing is a big part of our work as well. You'll see I was going to mention this later, but you'll see my colleague Kayla Strom in your committee and around the building this year, and she's our farm to school manager. And NOFA has a really long history with farm to school programming as well. And I was just going to say also, especially maple is a really interesting example to think about because there's a lot of acreage in those farms. So when you look at that 250 number, that represents 86,000 acres of forest land in the state that is being managed in a way that's really good for birds and other wildlife habitat, that provides jobs in our rural economies, and that is producing a delicious product that people want. So there's a lot more behind these numbers.
So as far as maple, and maybe you don't know, maybe we'll wait, until somebody else comes in, but don't see much chemical being used in maple and all that traditionally. What's the difference between a conventional maple organization and an organic one?
Yeah, it's a great question. So some of it has to do with the actual processing and the boiling of the sap into syrup. So on an organic operation, you wouldn't be allowed to use a synthetic defoamer, for example, when you're processing sap into syrup. You probably also wouldn't be allowed to use hot dogs, which is what my family tends to do, or like a little bit of half and half in the pan. And it also has a lot to do with forest management. So organic producers, that's sort of, I would say, the larger end of it on the producers, that they have to manage their forest in a way that really maintains the health and the ecosystem as a whole, as opposed to turning it, not that I'm saying conventional sugar makers are doing this, but you wouldn't be able to pull all your trees other than the maples and turn it into a plantation style of agriculture, for example. So you can only tap a certain number of trees below 9 inches in diameter, and you have to maintain the habitat for birds and other wildlife.
What about the fuel source used to boil the sap?
That doesn't necessarily play into the standard as it is right now. One thing that's interesting too about maple, we can talk about this all day, is that there isn't actually a national set of standards around maple as there are for a lot of other scopes. And so we have sort of the ability to set the standard a little bit more so in Vermont to what we feel is reflective of, our producers' practices and how they think organic maple should be done.
And are they actually getting a higher price for the organic maple versus, I know all the other products as a whole, but they're getting a higher price?
Yeah,
More
absolutely.
dollars per pound?
Yeah,
Well, that depends if they're selling it by bulk or by, yeah.
true. Yeah, I think oftentimes in commodity production, there is a premium, especially for organic product.
Cool.
Thanks for your questions. So we want to also share with you about our legislative priorities for this year in order to keep all these farmers supported and making sure our Vermont neighbors have access to their products. These are legislative priorities for this year. First, we're asking you to increase and provide base funding for 2 local food security programs called Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share, which is they're detailed on your handout there, and Joanna's going to share a little bit more about them in a moment. Secondly, we are asking you to pass a new bill called the Farm Security Fund that will provide permanent, rapidly available relief for funding for farmers impacted by climate emergencies and extreme weather. As I mentioned, NOFA is a core partner in the Farm to School and Early Childhood Coalition, and we're supporting their requests for level base funding for both the Local Foods Incentive Program that supports school meals programs to buy more local product from farmers, and also for the Farm to School and Early Childhood Grants Program. And then lastly, we are a core member of the Food Security Roadmap Coalition, who you'll be hearing more from on Thursday. And our policy priorities that we're sharing with you today are essential steps on that path to making sure that all Vermonters are food secure. So we're really excited about the work of that coalition. All right, Joanna, take it away.
All right. So, as I said, I'm the local food access director with NOFA Vermont. So I oversee our direct markets food access programs. And that includes Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share, which I'll tell you a little bit about. So this session, we are requesting $500,000 in base funding to support these proven programs. Crop Cash double SNAP for 3 Squares Vermont benefits at farmers markets. This means that anyone who receives SNAP benefits can go to a farmer's market, spend their benefits there, and then they'll get extra coupons to spend on produce. This program has existed for about 10 years in Vermont and is majority federally funded, though it does require a local match for NOFA to contribute in order to run the program. It's really grown a lot since the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've seen a lot of Vermonters use this program as a way to keep local and organic produce affordable for them. A lot of folks really appreciate being able to support their local farmer and go to the farmer's market to buy their food, and Crop Cash has been able to help them continue to do that. And as I said, NOFA has to provide a matching funding source in order to draw down federal funds. And so we're asking for state funding in order to do that. Crop Cash Plus was a 2023 pilot that expanded Crop Cash to all SNAP eligible foods. So when someone would go spend their SNAP dollars at a farmer's market, they could get extra coupons, not only to spend on produce, but also their local meat, eggs, dairy, bread, things that make up a whole diet. This was an incredibly successful program in 2023. It doubled the number of farmers that benefited from this program and brought more income to them. And it made it so that low-income Vermonters could really stretch their SNAP dollar further. They could afford to go to the farmer's market and buy things that they couldn't previously with the help of these extra Crop Cash dollars. Unfortunately, we had to pause the Crop Cash Plus expansion in 2024 due to lack of funding. And we're asking for state funding to be able to continue that program in FY26. And again, to continue drawing down federal funds for the Crop Cash program itself. And then finally, actually, this slide might help follow along. Those coupons in the picture are what Crop Cash look like. They're basically they look like monopoly money, and that's what folks get at the farmers market to then spend at different vendors' booths at the market. And again, each dollar of crop cash represents an actual US dollar, and the farmers are getting that money directly. Finally, Farm Share subsidizes community-supported agriculture shares, or CSA shares, which is a season-long subscription to a local farm. And this program provides 25 to 75% off the cost of the CSA share for limited income Vermonters. This program has been around for 30 years, and like Crop Cash, it has really grown in demand over the last few years, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. We see demand increase every year as affordability of food stays an issue for folks. A lot of participants have described this program as a lifesaver, as something that has been really necessary for keeping their food, particularly vegetables, in their diet, and have really appreciated being able to build a relationship with their local farmer and understand where their food is coming from. So these are some quotes from participants. We have the top one. This might be a little bit hard to read, but the top one is from a farmers market manager talking about how the Crop Cash and Crop Cash Plus program have really made going to a farmers market affordable for a lot of folks, particularly families and seniors. And it also directs money into local businesses. Our farmers are business owners, and these programs are a really important income source for them. The second quote is from a cheese producer, and she described a little bit about Crop Cash Plus in 2023 and how it brought new customers to her that she had never seen before, that couldn't afford her cheese otherwise, and it added an extra 20% to her weekly sales at the farmers market. And then finally, a quote from a senior participant in the Farm Share program describing how the Farm Share program made it possible for her to afford vegetables, keep her health up, and contributed to her cancer being in remission. So these are just some examples of how powerful these programs are. And I will say too, we are really grateful that we received $300,000 in FY25 for these programs. We have been able to support food security and farm income through Farm Share and Crop Cash this past year. So far, we've served over 800 households and getting consistent, fresh, local food at an affordable price. And we've also, again, supported farmers in receiving income through the year. This is a 13% growth compared to 2022 and 150% growth compared to 2019. This session, we're asking for $500,000 in base funding in FY26 so that we can continue to meet the increasing demand for these programs and continue to draw down on federal and philanthropic funds that are supporting these programs, and to fill the funding gap for Crop Cash Plus. Again, this past fiscal year, we didn't receive enough funding to provide the Crop Cash Plus expansion. And as we can see, this is a really impactful program for folks. So through these programs, we can be part of the roadmap towards food security in Vermont, 100% food security. We know that people can and should be food secure, and that we can achieve that. These programs are really integral to that process.
The $300,000 that you received last year, was that was your total monies from the state?
That's correct for FY25.
And where else do you receive monies from?
So we receive funds from some federal grants and some philanthropic grants and donations. The Crop Cash program in particular is funded through a USDA grant. And like I said before, we need to provide additional funds to draw down those federal funds. And then we also contribute some philanthropic funds towards the farm share program. But we have essentially, with the growth in demand, exhausted the amount of philanthropic funds that we can access, and it doesn't meet the demand that farm share has presented the last few years.
Was it a matching grant?
The federal funds for crop cash is a matching grant.
And how much that is 300 was going to cash crop.
For this fiscal year.
For the past year, so we kind of know what we're using.
Yeah, I might have to get back to you on the specific number just so I make sure I have it right.
Because a full 300,000 was for that, correct?
That's correct. It was divided among crop patch and farm share, and some administrative costs that go into running programs.
Mick is your organization. How many people? I mean, you have 5 in the State House, from looking at your notes here, but
Our staff,
yeah.
it's about 40 staff currently. Some of those are part-time, and about a third of those are with Vermont Organic Farmers, the certification program.
What during this winter for vegetables and that, do we have producers that are in the winter? Because I know it's winter. I've seen a lot of greenhouse projects. Is there quite a few farmers that are producing even through the winter?
Yeah, there are a number of farmers that continue growing food throughout the winter, and it's proven to be really important for food security through the cold months when a lot of folks are not gardening, and there's fewer farmers that are producing. We also have a number of farmers markets that operate throughout the winter and provide a vital food access source there. And then there are also CSAs that operate throughout the winter.
What else would you like to tell us?
Yeah, I'll turn it back to Maddie.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Lastly, I wanted to share that we are asking the legislature this year to pass the Farm Security Fund. This is a new piece of legislation that I mentioned that will provide reliable, readily accessible recovery funds to farmers impacted by climate emergencies and extreme weather. And I wanted to share a little bit with you about our experience at NOFA administering our own Farmer Emergency Fund. We had that fund in place since 1997. And since that time, but especially in the past 2 years, and during Tropical Storm Irene as well, we have learned a lot about what farmers go through when a flood or other weather emergency happens. And the state has collectively learned a lot. The Agency of Agriculture and all of us have learned a lot about the impact of these events on farms. We really know that federal programs like crop insurance are not designed for and don't meet the needs of the vast majority of Vermont's farmers. The Agency of Agriculture's Recovery Task Force last year found that, in 2023, found that 70% of the people that responded to their survey who were impacted by the flood did not have crop insurance. And we also know that the state has the ability to meaningfully support farmers through these events. So the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program, or BEGAP, provided really meaningful support to farmers and other working lands businesses impacted by flooding in 2023 and again last year. But we also know that we can learn from and improve on that process. We can make it better suited to the specific needs of farmers and other working lands business owners. And we can get funds out more quickly to allow farmers to get back to producing that food that we all rely on. We know from our direct experience administering the emergency fund that rapid relief funds can really make a difference for farmers in those first couple of weeks after an emergency, especially allowing them to cover things like payroll so that they can keep their employees on board to help with the cleanup and recovery they need to do. We also know that farmers in the midst of a crisis shouldn't have to make seeking support their full-time job, which many farmers have told us it does become. A lot of farmers are still going through that after the July flooding last year. Most of the current programs and systems for farm disaster aid that do exist involve complex and administratively burdensome paperwork, and in the end often provide too little relief to make it worthwhile. All of that further taxes a farmer's mental health in this time of crisis. Farmers are the heart of our culture and our community in Vermont, and we know that we can do better to help them when emergencies happen. And that's what the Farm Security Fund will do.
Is that a bill that you're working on with Senator Hardy?
Yes.
I've talked,
And I know
talked
she
with her
planning to
today.
come and share more.
Yeah, we've, I think she's talked to a couple of us. She certainly talked to me about it, so we won't get much into that bill yet until we see it, until it's written and all that, but we'll certainly have plenty of questions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. And then lastly, as I mentioned, these are the faces of NOFA staff that you can expect to see in the State House this session. In addition to myself and Joanna, you'll see Grace Odell, who's our executive director. She'll be here with us on Thursday for the Food Security Roadmap session. And you'll also see Jess Hayes Lucas, who's our grassroots policy organizer, and Kayla Stroud is our farm to school manager. And that's all for us. Thank you so much for your time and for your work, and we're happy to answer any
Well, I
questions.
thank both you, Maddie and Johanna, for coming in. And any more questions for the committee? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back, Maddie and Joanna, and see Amy here as well. I'm just trying to understand the funding request. The security fund will be a separate, and I don't know what amount that might wind up being. Maybe Senator Hardy and Senator Ingalls will confer on that. But just so I'm clear, so you had base funding of $300K last fiscal year or the current fiscal year, which pretty much took care of the crop cash and the farm share.
Yeah.
And the additional 200 that you're looking for, will that go to 100% the crop cash plus program? Or are you just gonna mash it all together and then divvy it out?
Great question.
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify, we got one-time funding this past fiscal year. And so we're asking for base funding so we can
Okay.
have a consistent supply of funds for these programs. And yes, the additional $200,000 would essentially go towards the Crop Cash Plus program, primarily to the actual dollar incentive, and then just a bit for printing the physical coupons, which is negligible compared to the money that would be going
Yeah.
to people and farmers.
And I've seen it work very well at the Rutland Farmers Market, so I'm in support of the idea at least. Speaking of which, I know we had a little bit of a kerfluffle last year with the Montpelier or Capital City Farmers Market in terms of where they were gonna go. Did that get resolved? I think it's a parking lot. Is it down by DOL or somewhere near there, I think?
I think it's the BGS parking.
Okay, yes, you're
Yeah.
right, Joanna.
My understanding is they have sorted it out, but I could check in with the manager.
It was just a curiosity kind of thing, because I know for a while it really looked dire. I mean, it seemed to be working where it was, and then
Yeah,
BGS decided that they wanted to do something different, but there was really, I know you've outgrown the space down where it used to be for years. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll be back and rearing to go here in the spring.
yeah, that's the hope as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you, Mark.
Mr. Chairman.
Good question.
So if worst came to worst and you just got a more consistent rather than one-time funding, would that be a win as well? If you only, because we know our budget restrictions right now, and if we were able to lock in maybe a permanent number every year, would you consider that a win?
We would consider any support for these programs to be a win. And we have this number of $500,000 based on what we see the need as. And any support would be a win.
The main issue that with not being able to run the Crop Cash Plus program, as I think you probably gathered from Joanna's comments, is that certain dietary needs aren't fully met through these programs. There's kind of a loss of efficiency in a sense when someone can't go to the farmer's market and access their full diet, especially for folks on limited incomes who might be dealing with food insecurity. Having to then shop at multiple venues is a challenge, and it also limits the number of farmers who can benefit from the programs, because if someone isn't producing fruits and vegetables, then only the Crop Cash Plus program can really support their operation. And we heard a lot of just really excellent feedback from farmers who, produce meat, eggs, dairy, about how important that program was for them. So we're hoping to be able to fund it again.
So as far as we know what you got last year, we know what you're asking for this year. In previous years, no monies, no.
We did in, was it FY22 receive?
FY23, we received a one-time legislative appropriation of $200,000, which allowed us to pilot the Crop Cash Plus expansion.
Senators, we want to thank you very much for coming in, very much,
Thank you.
great presentation, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you all.
Yes, you as well. Is that all we have as far as? Okay, well, let's stay online just for a second. So as you can see, you guys are probably pretty well aware of this, but usually anybody that's here coming in this room, it's, you know, we got an appropriation request and, you know, we always like to know. Again, what it was previous, what it was, you know, history of and what it's gonna be used for. Everybody did well, these folks did well presenting and, so. And, yeah, so we're very, just to explain to you folks as well, we're a very new committee. Brian's the only one that's been, Senator Collin, or the only one that has been here before, so we appreciate you, answering questions for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All set? I think we're all set.
Okay.